So it's interesting because as the economy ebbs and flows, so too does our mental health. Finances is one of the biggest stressors for people, right?
Absolutely.
So when things get rough for business, it's getting rough for people too. And that is not when you want to divest. We actually just did research this quarter. It will have been released by the time this goes live, that says that benefits and compensation is one of the best things about culture and also one of the worst things about culture, because there's still a lot of inequity about benefits and compensation and people's perceived fairness and also actual ability to afford their life given the changing nature of the economy and inflation, et cetera. So how do we deal with that? I mean, it's an election year right now. Things are going to get tense after the election. Who knows what's going to happen? People are going to be challenged financially over the next 2 years is my belief. Right. What can we do specifically about that? It feels like a circumstantial issue and not like I need more sleep issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, but much like more sleep, financial wellness and financial strain is a number one contributor to mental health and wellness. So those things will always be there, whether it's the economy, whether it's you perceive that your compensation, your annual compensation increase isn't sufficient to keep up with inflation or cost of goods and services. You've bought a house and you're stressed about gosh, how am I going to pay for this? It's so different to me. Those are the kinds of things that it's really important to recognize those external factors that are going on. And again, being able to offer these tools and services that then speak to things that are always there, regardless of those external factors being, an election year, the economy, ebb and flow, those kinds of things. That people's stress and anxiety around, for instance, financial wellness is always there, regardless of who you are. For the majority of people, we know there's a small percentage of people that's not as big a concern, but for the majority of people, financial health and wellness is a primary contributor to their mental health and wellness.
No, it's interesting because I remember early in my career, I thought, as soon as I start making $100,000 a year, I'm going to be good. I'll be comfortable. I won't worry about money anymore, And then I did. And then I said, okay, as soon as I have X number in my savings, I'll be good. And then I did. And it never went away. It went away actually when I got sober. When I started working the steps, then I got a serenity that really had nothing to do with my financial situation. The financial situation went up and down, but that wasn't the thing that was causing the stress necessarily. Now, I'm not discounting the poverty that people experience and that it is real. But for some, it's not real. For me, it wasn't real. For me, it was just a fear that was manifesting into anxiety on a daily basis about something that may or may not happen. So, okay.
Well, it's very real to you. I mean, thank you for sharing about your sobriety journey for sure. I mean, but it is in terms of all of these things are real if it's real to you. And that's where it's I make sure that, when we talk to people leaders about it, don't discount something that you yourself may not have experienced or understood.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, I have that theory about placebo, right? Well, placebo works. I mean, a placebo pill, if it works, it worked. It was fully effective, right? Okay, I don't want to hog you all to myself, although I kind of do, but I won't. We have a caller that I think has called in, so let's take their question and see what we hear. That is a great question. What do you think, Scott?
Well, thank you, for that question. I definitely believe that being a middle manager at an organization is the hardest job at the organization. Because let's say you're a manager, senior manager who was elevated from an IC recently to manage your former peers. You're someone who was brought in from outside the organization because you were someone who this is your opportunity to step into a people manager job. You were so close to remembering what it was like to be an IC. And you're so far from your own perception around being a member of the executive team where real change actually lives. So this is where I would say to organizations is talk to those people managers. Ask them, do you feel empowered? How can we make you feel empowered? What tools and resources and enablement do you need in order to bring all of that empowerment and the change to life? Oftentimes an organization will sit back and say, I know what our managers need, and particularly with the middle managers, I know what they need right now. It's skill building and to be able to manage the P&L. Well, that may be part of it, but you're actually assuming what people need versus really digging in and asking those managers what they need. Being able to deliver that is incredibly important. Being able to, at the outside from what Juan's question was on the accountability, being able to tell managers as a people leader here, by virtue of codifying it, is what you're responsible for as a manager. Here's what we're both enabling you by virtue of tools, but here's how we're actually measuring your success as a people leader so that those middle managers don't have to guess. Because by virtue of creating culture or by virtue of taking on a lot of these things, they may assume this thing that I find to be important is the thing the company needs. And they very likely could be wrong. So as a company, your responsibility is to say, this is what is expected, how it's measured, and then how it's rewarded. And the reward comes in multiple forms. Many companies will tie, let's just say, DEIB hiring metrics to an annual bonus. You could recognize through virtue of performance reviews and multipliers on people's bonuses or their opportunity for promotion to be able to say, hey, as a people leader, you met and exceeded all of our expectations by these measures. Here's how we're going to reward you. So the clarity on expectation and measurement, the empowerment in asking questions, and then the reward mechanisms all have to work together and be in place for you to truly engage, not and just any level of the organization, but particularly those middle managers who may not have had the direct experience. And this is their opportunity to learn, to implement, and for you to actually build the leaders of the future.
Yeah. Okay. So what is you personally, your greatest challenge as the chief people officer at COM? What is the number one thing that's keeping you up at night, interrupting your sleep?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about our people and like the volume of work that they manage, and particularly the volume of work that they manage in a remote environment relative to communication and loneliness. Because the communication aspects in a remote environment, you look at Slack, you look at email, you think about the phone call. All great. Everyone has a different level of engagement with them and what's actually meaningful. Do you have the information to do your job? So I always try and be thorough and direct and clear with all of my communication so that information is not power. It is just information. Here you go. And then I think about the loneliness of working remotely where, I'm lucky my husband's home all day long as well, working remotely. So we can chat throughout the day. But I think about people in major cities where maybe they're living alone. Maybe they're living with a roommate. Maybe they're just whatever their living scenario. They're just constantly staring at their screen and they're not engaging with other people. And I think about that in terms of how in a remote environment, we can create those levels of connection to combat the loneliness and be able to thoroughly communicate with people and give them the information they need to empower, enable them to do their job successfully.